In his Sunday sermon for this week, Jude Harmon opened up so much of the scriptures for me. It was a huge blessing. But one of the things he said was that Jesus really felt at home in Bethany, this place where Martha and Mary and Lazarus lived. And it was also a dangerous place for him. When the disciples heard that he was going back to there, they said, "They will stone you if you go back." It was a place both of home and of dangerous. But this evening, I want to talk to you more about what this place meant to Lazarus. At Bethany, Lazarus came to see and know God with absolute certainty. He became the only person to experience life after having died. That home place, that dangerous place, came to have a whole new significance. That place changed the meaning of all other places. In his book, Walden, Henry David Thoreau writes, "Any prospect of awakening or coming to life of a dead man makes indifferent all times and places. The place where that may occur is always the same and indescribably pleasant to the senses." This evening, we are gathered together here in a place to celebrate another place where so many people have come alive again. The Bishop's Ranch in Healdsburg, California. And we are here to celebrate all the people who make it possible. We're here to celebrate the donors and the cooks and the housekeeping staff and the leaders and the other staff members who are there. And all the people who lead retreats that always offer the possibility that we might be profoundly changed and transformed. Now, I remember the first time I went to the Bishop's Ranch. It was right after I met you, Linda. Linda Gavenda's here. We met 37 years ago. That's when the two of us first met. And I remember around that time going to the Bishop's Ranch for a Cal Stanford Canterbury retreat. So the youth ministry for those universities. It was the only thing in my entire life that I ever did, which is a Cal Stanford thing, that didn't have competition at the heart of it. Have you ever known? I played in a lot of sports games against Stanford, and we've been to witness a lot of them. It was the only place where we were really building souls together. And I remember talking in that day to the person who led the Stanford band onto the field in 1982 when the play happened. And for you boys, this was a classic moment in sports history. Cal was about to lose the big game against Stanford, and it looked like they'd been tackled, but they hadn't been tackled. And they passed the ball around, made like 8 different back passes, lateral passes. And during that time, the Stanford band thought that they had won the game and came onto the field. And that chaos was what led to the Stanford team losing that year, very improbably. But in that retreat, I remember talking to someone who was reading Ovid in Latin. I remember sitting by a roaring fireplace as the rain fell outside in the springtime and talking about what God really meant to us. I remember walking down the hill trying to get to the Russian River and going through a herd of cows. I remember walking up the hill before any of the pathways had ever been created and struggling to make it over the terrain. But most of all, that place was a place for me that expanded my boundaries. My whole life before that was the small little church where I'd grown up, the small little church I lived. My vision, my imagination, my experience were all parochial. And the people I met on that weekend offered me a new, beautiful, thoughtful, and generous faith. They helped me to wake up to faith in Jesus. And Jesus says, "I am resurrection and I am life. Those who believe in me, even though they die, will live." And from that point, I began to live. Now, years later, I remember the feeling of walking up to the registration table on a dusty September afternoon, only about a month after being ordained as a deacon in the church. And I remember being there for my first clergy retreat. And you know who I met there? Mark Stanger. I met Mark Stanger, I met Alan Jones, I met Fran Tornquist, I met Mary Moore Gaines, I met Jude Harmon for the first time at the Bishop's Ranch. And I met hundreds of other people, some of whom have changed my life. In those days, Cal Rutherford would always call me by my best friend's name. And he would have a little sparkle in his eye that showed how much I meant to him. The Bishop's Ranch was a place where I took all my questions, my philosophical and theological and technical, all my questions that I gathered from my parish, and I would ask every clergy person I met over the weekend or the retreat how I should handle these different matters in my own congregation. It was a time that profoundly shaped me. And for our family, it was so important. I have a video of my daughter, Melia, learning to walk at the Bishop's Ranch on that little driveway outside the ranch house. And there she is, like taking her first steps there at the Bishop Ranch. It was a place where our children could learn that other adults could teach them things spiritually. And I remember so many great things. I always remember carrying the church's lawyer, like piggyback style, across the creek at sunset. I remember walking with new parents out to the lake. I remember playing the ukulele and singing at the fire circle. I remember all those chance encounters that you have outside the refectory waiting for a meal. And most of all, I remember the men and boys choir. Every year, they do something fantastic in the chapel of St. George, and it transforms me. So this evening, I want to say thank you to all the people who made this possible. I want to thank everyone who had a part in transforming people's lives, changing people's lives for the better. It was at the Bishop's Ranch also that I learned that I could have a new kind of relation to God. And it's a relationship that Thoreau also talked about 150 years ago in his book Walden. He writes this: "Nearest to all things is the power which fashions their being. Next to us, the grandest laws are continually being executed. Next to us is not the workman whom we have hired, with whom we love so well to talk, but the workman whose work we are." May God bless all of those who help us to find new life, and all of those who show us the workman whose work we are. Amen.